Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled Seems Fishy? It Probably Is. We scam the scammers with gift cards, and here's what happened. Getting victims to send gift cards is a very popular BEC scam, so we asked what happens to those gift cards when the threat actors get them. And today we'll discuss what we found out when we traced those cards. Leading us with the conversation today, we have Tanya Dudley, CISO at Cofense, and joining Tanya, we have Ronnie Tokozowski, our Principal Threat Advisor and BEC expert at Cofense. Welcome, Tanya, and welcome, Aaron. Thank you for giving us your time and expertise today. All right, folks, before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. You can ask questions at any time throughout today's sessions using the Q&A window in your console. We will take time at the end for questions, but you can ask them at any time. This webcast is being recorded. Everyone here today is going to receive a link to the recorded session so you could watch it on demand. And one other note, on the right side of your console, you'll find links to the report we're talking about today and other very cool, awesome BEC-related items from Cofense. Now I have all that out of the way. I'm going to pass things over to Tanya and get started. Tanya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thanks for everyone for joining us today. So just real quick on what our agenda is. We're going to start with, of course, who Cofense is, but then just a little bit about the history of BEC, so that you kind of, understand where we've been and how we kind of started this journey. And then Ronnie's going to go through what he found when he did this research with scamming our scammers with some gift cards, and learning what happens with those gift cards. And then we'll just close out with a few mitigating things that we recommend that you do when it comes to BEC. But then we also have a special guest joining us today. Our little John Doe here. Our marketing team did such a great job of this graphic. How could I not resist to play along here? So we want to welcome our John Doe for participating in this campaign. So just real quick, who is Cofense? So we are end-to-end email security. And if, as you look across the screen, you can see our solution capabilities. So we start with, looking at the threats that are with Validator. It gives you some insight into what is making it through into your, to the inboxes of your users. We feed that with our intelligence product, and we feed our intelligence throughout all of our products here at Cofense. It is our human vetted, specific to phishing email. So it gives you that great insight into the number one attack vector, which is phishing. Protect is our platform for small businesses at this point and MSSPs to help protect our small customers when it comes to phishing campaigns. And then we have Vision that also has those same capabilities. So we're able to feed in our intelligence product into Vision and auto quarantine campaigns that are coming past that human vetted, what we are seeing across multiple customers and several of our other collections into that to mitigate that threat before your users even have a chance to interact with that. We do our simulation with our Phishy product, and then Reporter is how we are able to get those emails ingested into Triage and Vision and show your resiliency rate with our Phishy product. So without further ado, I'm going to kick us off with this whole business email compromise. In some regions, they refer to it as CEO fraud. And so I love hearing about this story back when our co-founder, Aaron Higbee, was here and Ronnie was in his office and they were just chatting. And then our, at the time, CFO came running in saying, hey, what's this email asking me to wire money from Rohit? Rohit doesn't have an iPhone. So I think that is probably where Ronnie started his journey with this whole BEC thing. And we've seen the tactics shift over time. This initial one was asking for a wire, and because of the work that Ronnie was able to do, networking with the financial services industry, to be able to use their fraud detection mechanisms to be able to stop some of those wires from happening. The threat actors realized that and shifted, right? And so now we see them leveraging other mechanisms to, at the end of the day, get the money they're after. We see them, asking for changes to vendor master files so that invoices are rerouted to them versus who you should really be paying, who you're really paying. Direct deposit is another big one. And then today, what we're going to cover is our gift card scam. So when it comes to these BEC losses, officially, according to the IC3 report, it's $43 billion. And we know that all of these numbers are extremely underreported, right? Because when we think about some of these smaller dollar amounts, they don't typically get reported in, right? If your direct deposit's lost, if you've spent $1,000 or two on gift cards, those get written off. And so we know that those small amounts can all add up. And when we compare that to what we see with ransomware, it's $21 billion. It doesn't get the attention it needs. And so that's why we've brought Ronnie on to really help us understand this threat and really get the focus around this and how we can help companies mitigate this, how to detect it. Some of those other numbers that we have there are quite enormous when we look at unemployment fraud, which all of these kind of have still a tie to the BEC threat landscape. Romance victims, since this number has been collected in the IC3 report since 2007, I think, Ronnie, you told me. So just looking at that, and we know this number is going to go up because now that people are starting to recognize this, there's more communications, there's more visibility to what this is. We're helping, especially even with the National Cybersecurity Alliance, right, getting the word out and providing content that you can help educate your aging adults. And, because we see many of these victims are over the age of 50, right? It's that aging age group that tends to be lonely and online and look for those. That chart on the right-hand side is from the IBM cost of a data breach report this year. And so I think it's interesting that BEC is right up there with phishing, and they don't even keep those two. They keep those two separate. So just another interesting point. So when it comes to gift cards, so this is something that we hear over and over again. I know every time that I talk to any of my friends and family, I hear about this, right? And we hear about this over and over again, but then we hear about it because they fell victim to it, right? They had a loss. I have a close friend who told me her whole story. She's a COO, but very well educated, who fell victim. And so it's around asking for an urgent task. I need you to do this right away for me. I need you to run a quick errand. And even in the first research, the first phase of this research that we did, Ronnie was able to see that it takes that second or third email. We call them conversations, right? Because they're not asking for that initial ask in that initial email. It's taking 2 or 3 messages. They're building up that reputation, trust to get you to engage with them. And then sometimes they divert that directly to SMS, right? So, hey, can you send me your personal mobile number so that I can message you, or WhatsApp, or that sort of thing. So I'll let Ronnie kind of get into what happens, why these gift cards are so valuable as he kind of goes through the research. Then I think it'll become evident why it is that they ask for these gift cards and where does it lead to, and what we can do.
Awesome. Thanks for bringing it over, Tanya. And you also mentioned one thing that I wanted to point out, and this is a sentiment that I've heard from many, many, many people. A lot of the people who are here on the call today, who are in information security, many of us know that friend, that family member, that somebody twice removed that got hit with some sort of scam, whether it was an IRS scam where they picked up, answered their phone, whether it was a tech support scam for a grandparent or something. A lot of people know a victim here, and that's one of the things we're finding is there are so many people who are hit with this type of scam or this flavor of scam. Like we don't know the true scale of this. But I just kind of want to make one direct point on that and everything too. So to go ahead and get this kicked off, specific on gift cards, scammers, when it comes to the phishing engagements, like Tanya was saying, we know that scammers will usually know will usually wait until the second or third email in order to identify what type of card it is they want. So as we were doing this research, as we were doing this engagement, we wanted to kind of use that in order to try and give them as much stuff as we could. And when we did the initial phases of the research, we didn't realize we were going to be actually giving the scammers gift cards, but we actually want to do that. So when we started, we wanted to go ahead and respond from our own infrastructure, because we could go and come from something that was from Cofense.com, from fakecompany.com, but we wanted to modify and actually make it look like a legitimate company. And that's where we were able to kind of hook the scammers, was to try and identify some of those things that we could do. We went ahead and purchased $500 worth of gift cards, and that's what we used. Is we actually used $500 of gift cards. I went to my corner grocery store, picked them up, purchased them, took pictures of them. I literally have a book behind me. It looks like a whole book of Pokemon cards. And that's what we did, is we actually gave the scammers the gift cards. Our methodology in order to go and start engaging with this was we wanted to identify different areas that we knew, okay, this is more than likely going to be a gift card scam. We didn't actually give cards to every single engagement. I would say for about all the engagements that we did, about half of them turned into a possible opportunity, and from there, I think it was like a third of the total number was able to make it to where we could go ahead and engage. And again, that's what we did, was we were able to make it look like we were coming from some other organization, like, again, under our control. And we did that. We just offered them gift cards. And if you want a nice way to kind of saying how we engage, we socially engineered the scammers, and it was absolutely glorious, the results that we came out with. So let's go ahead and kind of start digging into the research and what we figured out. So just one more thing before I start digging into that. So the gift cards that we use, and again, this is kind of some of the stuff that we learned, scammers strongly prefer stored gift cards. So if you use a gift card that kind of goes out of that norm, which is what we did, they'll keep trying to pivot back. And what I mean by that is, if it comes to like an iTunes gift card, if it comes to a Target gift card, if it comes to an Apple gift card, scammers want those. Because they're much harder to track, they're much harder to identify where they're being purchased for, and in most cases, they have a higher sell value. The cards we use, again, we could track where they were purchased, which is how we were going to go ahead and do the research. Scammers, again, needed just the pictures of it, so we knew that we can go ahead and purchase the cards, send them a picture of the cards in the receipt, and then kind of pass it over. And that was kind of how we were able to, again, get that kicked off. Some of the things that we discovered during this research, scammers don't like to go against templates and formats that they're usually used to. So, for example, many of your scammers will ask for $1,000 in gift cards. They'll ask for $2,000 in gift cards. They'll be like, okay, go ahead and purchase them in $100 denominations, $200 denominations, and they're looking for those larger numbers. So when we did this engagement, we actually gave them $25 gift cards as part of that. And again, in their mind, because you broke that, it kind of caused a little confusion. And as strange as it sounds, it actually became hard to actually give scammers money. You would think that because they're so financially driven, they would want to go for it. But yeah, it actually became difficult to just give them these in some cases. And again, the other thing we also noticed too is because of how many times and how many accounts many of these scammers will engage with, just from their own accounts, we actually found them getting confused and like using different names. So was it this Ian? Was it that Ian? Was it this Michael or John? And during these engagements, they would literally switch their names as they were going forward. And it was just so weird that they wouldn't keep track of that. But again, just how the emails went through, we actually saw them having identity crises. So, whatever. But they would seriously switch back and forth on that in order to just continue engaging. So, like I said, really neat stuff that we found.
I think that's interesting, because I remember back in the early days of you trying to capture the wire information, right, where, you know, some of your working group would ask for, hey, that account didn't work, do you have another one? And I think in one instance we saw them send over the whole spreadsheet, right, of,
yep.
You know, kind of leaked out too much information because they got frustrated that we kept
yep.
going back and forth too many times, right? So I think it's interesting when we can catch them off script, right, and not follow along to see what it is that they're going to ask for.
Yeah, and the most interesting thing is there's a lot of people who actually engage with the scammers back and forth. And the funniest thing, I kind of want to mention this too. We actually have unofficial records that we actually track. So in one case, one guy was able to get like 30 accounts. There was another person who blew that out of the water and got 70. One of the older scam baiters, we got to talking. He's like, no, no, no. He's like, I've got 200 bank accounts out of some of these guys. So it's something where when the actors go ahead and doing this and when they're given that information, we're totally stealing it and passing it off to the powers that be just to be like, hey, go and stop this stuff, go and prevent these attacks. And the cool thing is, some of the feedback that we've gotten is while there was no money sent in some cases, a lot of organizations are able to actually flag that and say, okay, if any money comes into this account, flag that as being suspicious because based on this intelligence over here, there's a good chance that this is going to happen. And those are some of the successes that we've had in mitigating these attacks is, I don't want to go like Minority Report precog here, but we're able to see where those accounts are going. And because they're being used, we can get ahead of that crime in other ways. Again, that's one of the areas where we have a ton of success on is actually helping prevent some of these attacks and identifying money mules as part of it.
And some of them we were able to even recover funds, right? Because we were able to have those indicators early on. So, okay, well, back to gift cards now. So
yeah, and like and I know, and I went to a conference with IC3. I know that they were they had actually mentioned in one of their presentations, they've actually recovered millions and millions of dollars. I know Secret Service has recovered millions of dollars. FBI has recovered millions. So we're having success getting some of this money returned, and that's why we're starting to see scammers experiment with other cash out methods in order to kind of go and continue. So getting back to the topic of our presentation here, where we fish the scammers. So I don't want to brag, but the scammer actually fished me. Actually, it was Rohit that actually fished me. And I don't know how they're sending these stuff, but the scammer actually messaged me to my personal phone number. It said, hey, this is Rohit. Are you in the office? I need you to go and do this urgent transfer. And I'm like, okay, crack my neck. Here we go. This is going to be fun. So I let's just say I put everything into perspective for the scammer and explained. I'm like, so here's who you messaged and everything. And I'm like, tell me about you. Tell me your life story because I want to know where and why you're doing this. What motivates you to do this? What got you into scamming? And my curiosity just like went off like a rocket. So in talking with the scammer, I was able to kind of break through and able to flip them and kind of start getting some information out of them. So in talking with the scammer, it turns out that he was located in Nigeria, lived out there, and he was 50 years old. And in talking with him, trying to learn a little bit what he was, who he did, why he was doing that, he started opening up about some of the things that he did out there in Nigeria. He's like, we have a very hard life out here. He's like, I don't really have any other opportunities. He's like, I had somebody who recommended me doing this, and that's kind of the way I was able to go forward and do that. And that's a reality of a lot of the situation is that many of the people who get pulled into this, while some of them will get pulled into it thinking, oh, I'm going to go make millions, some of them do it because it's the only way they can live. And in talking with him, it turns out that the previous job he had was working as a tailor where he would go ahead and make and manufacture shirts. And for the shirts that he would hand make from the sound of it, he'd only get $1.20 per shirt. And if you think about the amount of effort that goes into cutting the cloth, sewing the cloth, identifying the cloth, knowing the little intricate designs that go into some of these some of the fabrics, $1.20 is not a lot. You can go and buy a shirt at your corner convenience store for $15. And again, a handmade tailored shirt for $1.20 versus $15 is not a lot. And I really kind of felt bad for him just because, again, in telling me this, it's kind of was his life story on that and everything. Or at least from everything I've studied, it seemed legit. So in talking with him, I'm like, okay, I'll go ahead and give you a gift card because you did help me out here, and I kind of want to help you out too. He was able to give us insight and perspective into some of the real problems that people are actually facing on this. And that's some of the hardest times working this is understanding that while we have angry bits and bytes that get said back and forth, there's actually a human element to all of this business email compromise stuff. There's a human element to all of these romance scams. And that's what we need to understand is there's so much more going on to that. So once he had the card, we still sniffed it to see where it went. But once we had the card and sent it over, It turns out that he actually sold it locally there, that somehow magic happened and went through the chain, and the account was actually used to purchase TikTok Live. So looking at the way it was purchased, it was actually 5 different instances where someone had purchased the ability to go live on TikTok. The context of why somebody would do this, I really don't know. But whoever it was, and with the way it was purchased and how it all came out on the same day, we were able to identify, and based on that, we were able to know that this had to have been 5 separate accounts. And it was 5 different instances where that was purchased. So somebody and who had purchased this, what that means is they had 5 accounts that they were purchasing for TikTok Live for something. We ended up with a whole lot more questions than answers on some of these things. But again, that's something that we know. We could kind of go and be like, okay, was this a TikTok Live farm who was doing this? Was it some random person who did it and gave it to his friends? We don't know. But again, just some of the stories that we were able to kind of deduce from some of these things here. So kicking off to the next engagement that we had, this was one of those ones where Ian William or even Foy needed $1,000 of Steam gift cards. And for those people who are not gamers, for those who don't like playing No Man's Sky or other fun games like that, Steam is a way that you can go and download games through a game store, and those gift cards can be used in order to purchase them. And what Ian needed was he needed us to do him something right away. And that's one of the common themes here that we see with many of these scams is there's a level of urgency, a level of you have to go do this, you need to go do this right now. But again, back to the scammer, they specifically asked for Steam gift cards that can be used on the Steam side for games. Again, why they want that and what that cash out method looks like, I have no idea. I have no idea what the cash out method looks like for the scammers for Steam cards, like on the back end, but that's what we saw being purchased. So instead of giving him $1,000 worth of gift cards, we gave them $25 of the trackable gift card to go and send that over to them. And while they received the cards, while they were able to go forward with that, they were confused that they were expecting more. Like, where's the gift cards? Where's the rest of them and stuff? And that's one of the common things that we see here is that once they have the money, they will continue engaging. They will continue badgering. I got pulled into one case where it was a student who had gotten targeted at a new company, and it was upwards of $30,000 that person had lost. And that's one of the things that we identified was with many of these engagements, it will continuously keep going. But once this,
because if you hand over the cash, then they know they have somebody on the hook that they can keep manipulating for.
Yeah, and that's a thing, Tanya, is once the people are pulled into it, and once they know that money is able to be sent, they will drain you. They will absolutely and utterly continue going until you block them, remove them, and even once you do that, they'll still keep coming after you if they believe that they can get more money out of you. But yeah, that was that one specific engagement that we saw was the, hey, can you go and do this errand such as this, turned into $30,000 fraud. The person ended up trying to remember there was someone. They ended up not having enough money to purchase their own food because they thought they were doing stuff for the boss. They got pulled into. They were really moody in the office towards the individual. So it's something where, again, these are real human lives and human emotions that are at play here because of a lot of what's going on specifically with a lot of these scams. So back to this specific instance, for the card, we actually saw it being used at Amtrak. So again, the cash out method here would have been scammer stole gift card got redistributed gift card got purchased somewhere, purchased gift card then got purchased over to Amtrak. What that Amtrak thing was that they were being using, again, I don't know. We actually tried reaching out to Amtrak and passed them the card number to say, hey, here's the context here. This is very much a square peg in a round hole where we have no idea what this one was, but we wanted to kind of let you know. Unfortunately, we never got any of that background intelligence on how this worked. But again, that was kind of what played into this.
So was that Amtrak in New York? Because I saw the New York on there. So was it somebody in New York that bought an Amtrak ticket in New York, or that just is the coding of where it came from?
So in looking at it, I believe it was something that was actually purchased in New York.
Okay.
It looked like it may have been either that Amtrak station. They may have like $25 here, $25 here. And again, a lot more questions than answers on this. Was
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
just trying to save a couple bucks, or was it a human trafficking ring that got identified because they were able to go and buy cards with cryptocurrency, then launder it for untrackable stolen cards? I don't know. But like I
Yeah.
said, with many of these, we end up with just so many more questions. Which is a great segue into this one, of where we had so many more questions than answers. And this one was probably the strangest one that we found. And this one came from again, his scammer's name was Andrew Quinton on this, and they requested 5 American Express gift cards. And because of the way that they do it, they know that a lot of people are working from home. They're working in the office, and they want you to actually go and do something. They try and, again, give you that task of go and do something. And in this case, that's what they said, was they asked us to go ahead and leave. So in this one, we provided $25 to the scammers. And once we did, they asked what was going on. Again, very much similar to the previous scammer. They were like, there was supposed to be more cards and everything. There was supposed to be more. You're supposed to send more. But the transaction of this one was for a place in Sheridan, Wyoming, to a place called B-Kids. That's B-K-I-D-Z. And if you've never heard of B-Kids before this presentation, we had never heard of B-Kids before looking at it on the credit card receipt. So it was something where we were like, what's this B-Kids? And go search, and like in your like you're watching this right now, whoever's on the other end here, Control T, open a new tab, go to Google, type B-Kids, and you will find there's virtually nothing. Like, there is very little information. There's no references. It's all weird looking websites that makes absolutely and utterly no sense whatsoever. And that's what we found too. So in doing some digging, we were able to actually identify an online retailer. It was called KitZay. That was an online retailer that sold children's toys and other types of goods. The store, all of the currencies for the store is actually in the Myanmar or Burmese kyat. I don't know if that's kyat. I don't know the correct way to purchase it. But this was the banner that we found on the website. And again, this was the only reference that we found to B-Kids, because in credit card transactions, you can have the display name that can get modified. But again, this was the only possible lead that we found on this. So again, we could be shifting in the totally wrong direction on this transaction here, and we totally acknowledge that. But again, this is what we were able to find. And from there, and kind of looking at some of the stuff in the online market, it turns out that KitZay actually has and sells counterfeit toys. And at the time, I didn't realize it. Like, I had to pull some stuff up on YouTube. Turns out, fun fact, there's an entire market of counterfeit toys, an entire market of counterfeit goods. There's reviews online where you have the legitimate version, you have the illegitimate version. And this was one of the examples that we were able to find for the counterfeit good. And in looking at it and looking at the stuff on in KitZay, the item number, again, you can go and pull this up. It'll come right up for you. The item number was the pound symbol E4353, and it's essentially a toy that was able to be purchased on AliExpress. So if they were using AliExpress as a storefront, which is common for a lot of vendors, that was one of the things that we did notice. And again, because of the way that this stuff went through and how it was tracked and transactioned and moved, identifying, like I said, it's going to be a big train of thought here. So identifying counterfeit toys in Myanmar and China based on BEC engagements for Nigerian actors, that the cards usually get sold for cryptocurrency. Like I said, it's mind trip on that one. But
So do you think part of this diversion was because we tripped them up with using these odd amounts that they couldn't just, like, maybe is there a minimum on those cryptocurrency sites, right? So now they had to figure out, okay, how do I launder these cards now? So we kind of we went down an alley we didn't expect to go down.
Yeah, and that's entirely possible because like there's a thing, it's called the fraud Bible, and what it is it has like dozens and dozens and dozens. Like we may actually try and cover it at some point, but it's got like different cash out methods, not just for like, oh, you can hit PayPal with this, you can go do cash out for this. No, it's like really small. Here's this edge corner store that you can go and do this thing to cash out on, and we see things like this very common. Where they will, again, they'll go and hit this small side edge niche case just to make $1 in order to do it. And yeah, Tanya, you're right. This could be one of those cases where they're like, we're going to go and buy these goods and then reship them somewhere else. Again, reshipping scams are part of this. And the more we dig into this, the more we understand, the more we realize we have no idea how this stuff works. And
well,
yeah,
speaking
like
of
I
that,
said,
let's move along so we can get through the rest of these because we do have some questions piling in, which I'm excited to get to.
Definitely. And then the last transaction, like I said, I'll be quick on this one. The scammer went through multiple different names. One was David, one was Lynn, and they wanted $1,000 of iTunes or Google Play cards. Again, we're like, no, you ain't getting that card. You're getting this one we have here. Here's a $25 one. And as we kind of gave that card to them and everything, the card was actually purchased on a website called Givingly. And what Givingly is for is it's for purchasing like digital, like you can purchase digital cards, you can send flowers, you can do a lot of things like that. And the reason that's interesting, and again, another common tactic that we see for romance victims, is that scammers will actually send chocolates, they will send flowers, they will send those physical things, and they will use stolen cards and stolen information to send that. So when some of these people are actually in this relationship, when they are trying to go and do these different things, your romance victim may actually have received flowers from somebody to kind of play up that legitimacy and play up the truth of that. So again, this was one of those ones where were they using Bitcoin to purchase that and then do that? We don't know. But again, it sounds like a very plausible thing. And I kind of mentioned this throughout, but we ended up with so many more questions on this one than answers. And like, I wish we had the ultimate answer for y'all to say, hey, here's this thing, here's this perspective. We don't. So it's something where, like I said.
One of the things I thought was most interesting when I was reading the report, that one of the scammers actually knew that the purchase date wasn't just now, right? Mm-hmm. It was an older card, right? So they're also looking at some of the legitimacy of the card that you're sending. I thought that was interesting.
And it was one of those ones where I think it was like a week or two off because I had purchased the cards, got too busy doing other stuff, then came back and everything. And you're like, well, the date's off on this card. What do you mean you went ahead and just ran to the store and purchased it? So yeah, they look and they're aware of that stuff. So I had to be like, yeah, sorry, the store I went to go purchase this at, they were having trouble with the computer. Oops. So still took it, still bought it, still sold it. So.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, and also make sure you guys check out our report because there's engagements that we did not fully cover in here. So Tanya, do you want to go ahead and take over from here and kind of talk through some of the mitigations as it comes to business email compromise threats?
Yeah, so we covered specifically gift cards on here, but as Ronnie mentioned over and over again, BEC covers and touches everything that we talk about, right? Direct deposit, invoice scams, and then now the gift cards. But most importantly is making sure that you're reporting this, right? The IC3 website has a place that's BEC is called out really, I think right at the top, there's a banner for reporting that stuff. Make sure you're reporting every little dollar, right? Because it matters. While you might just have one instance of it, right? Encourage your employees to still report that into your security teams. One of the things that I'm hearing over and over again is disable auto forwarding, right? Because when they get a cred, right, the credential, they're able to put Outlook rules in that auto forward messages on that you don't know is happening, right? And so, when you're resetting that cred, make sure that there's no rule set up that you don't recognize. And then if at an organizational level, just disable that functionality altogether, because not only does it help in this instance, but it's going to help in your data leakage, right? Like, why should anybody be forwarding, any kind of content out of your organization? And then implement and reinforce process changes. So, we talked to a CISO last year sometime where he was trying to deal with this whole invoice fraud. And he had been taken for, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so he was working with his finance team and any new vendor management or vendor master changes to a bank account, he put a 3-day hold on that, right? Look to see where you can make some changes to make sure that you can still verify bank account changes. At the end of the day, they're trying to get you to change the bank account so that it diverts to them. They even went to the extreme to set up a spoofed website that looked just like it. So, their process was to verify the website, verify all these things, but because they went to extremes and the threat actor, knew all of these, knows to, do all these authentication mechanisms, that's why he put a 3-day hold on any payments to any bank account changes, right? Because, they were frustrated, but he was like, at the end of the day, it's going to save us money. I would rather pay late fees than be out, hundreds of thousands of dollars. I talked to somebody at a conference a couple weeks ago. He was working with a client that lost $1 million. $1 million is quite significant, right? And those funds are hard to recover. And that often happens because, they make that change, but you're not making that payment. You might not realize that payment hasn't been paid for a month or so, right? Before the company's coming after you saying, hey, you're delinquent in your payment, right? They're not following up a day or two. So when that time lapse happens, you're not able to recover those funds. And it's unfortunate at that point. And then I always recommend, CEO messaging, right? Making sure that your leadership, senior leadership, your executive teams, that they're communicating to your teams saying, I will not ask you to go get gift cards. I am not going to ask you to do these things. So if you see anything that looks like it's coming from me related to these types of transactions, they are not me, report those, right? Because that messaging can go a long way, because we often hear the employees are making sure they're looking good for their boss, right? Who doesn't want to do what their boss is asking for? The victim that Ronnie was talking about that lost $30,000, the whole time he thought he was really communicating with his boss. That was what the situation was with that individual, is that they really thought they were helping out their boss on the down low, right? They're, because the threat actor is communicating with them, don't tell anybody, make sure that this, nobody finds out about this, so there's a lot that can go a long way, by just doing that messaging. So I think, Chris, you're gonna do some housekeeping, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
Yes, so thank you so much, Tanya. Thank you so much, Ronnie. That was so interesting. I think everybody is already asking what's the next experiment. They can't wait to hear what you and Ronnie come up with next. So folks, if you have any questions, it's Q&A time. Go ahead and type those in the box, and we're going to get to those in a minute. Also want to draw attention to the upper right-hand corner of your screen. You're going to see quite a few BEC-related resources from Cofense. Please feel free to click on those and check them out. And also coming up, we've got a webinar next month. The title is Staying Ahead of a Breach in Uncertain Times, What Email Security Experts Predict for 2023. We're doing that on December 7th. I will include a link to an invite so you can sign up for that on your return email from this. Also in that email is going to be an on-demand link for this webinar. You can also check out Cofense's BEC resources at cofense.com, Business Email Compromise. And don't forget, we always have our annual report out there. And check that out, cofense.com/annual report. All right, Tanya, we've probably got more questions than we're going to get to, so let me go ahead and say this. Yeah, some of you're not going to get your questions answered. I'll have Tanya, Ronnie, will reach out to you directly and answer your question if we don't get to it today. And with that, Tanya, let's do our Q&A.
Yeah, so we'll go through a few of these. So we have just a few minutes left. Why is $400 bill crossed out and changed to a $100 bill?
Yeah, I got that one. So,
okay.
Yeah, I remember the slide. So in one of the slides, I had a reference. It was the losses that we had, and it had to do with the small business applications and different types of government fraud. And what it was I had $400 billion there. I had that marked out, and I had $100 billion. So where that anecdote comes from is there's an organization called ID.me that is actually responsible for a lot of identification verification as it comes to identity fraud and when it comes to verifying different things with government applications. their CEO initially came out and said that there was $400 billion of fraud as a result of small business applications. They're like, we believe this is the number. It was kind of an estimate and stuff. But based on some of our collaborations with the Secret Service and working with them, and kind of getting the fuller scope on that, there was some press that came out where Secret Service came out officially and said, here is our official number. Our official number is $100 billion. So it's a reference to the one where it may have been the 400, where it may have been the 400, but the solid number is that $100 billion.
So I think this is a good question. How do we find these scammers? And so I know Ronnie is able to dig into our Phishing Defense Center and look for these types of messages. And then so what I find is interesting, because I did this myself, a couple of years ago as we were doing a BEC webinar, is finding an email and responding to it from a different email, and they still interact with you. So Ronnie, how are you selecting which one of these that you chose?
Yep, that was exactly it. Every single one of the emails that we responded to, engaged with, kind of started that conversation, was based on some user in some organization who had passed that, who had said, this looks suspicious. So every single one was user reported based on the trained user. And what we did was we modified the names, we modified the email accounts, we de-anonymized the organization, we removed all of that. So much so that even when you look at the names like the Ian Quinton or whatever it was I had used, we actually forged the name and put a completely brand new name there that wasn't even referencing the initial target. So we totally de-anonymized it to go and engage with them, and that's what we did. We removed all that information, we sent something from a completely different persona, and they still bit, they still engaged. And a lot of that has to do with the scale of these guys are operating at. They'll go and send some 200 and 300 emails per day to different companies, and they will literally copy paste from this page to that page to that page to that page based on who's the CEO, the CFO, the controller, the person who's working some of these things. And that's what we did. Like I said, we modified that stuff, removed every ounce of possible identifiable information, even if it was like the question was like, no, we removed it, and engaged with them. So yeah, 100% user reports. Go train your users. There's the benefit right there.
So, Ronnie, I'm going to ask this last question and kind of preface it with, so do you recommend engaging with the scammers to help law enforcement or Secret Service to catch these scammers? And I know back when it was wire transfers, right? If you were in certain organizations, it was very, you could be violating some of your own internal policies or regulations. So I know we do this because we have the infrastructure to do this, but if you're doing it from infrastructure that can get detected, it's probably a little bit more not as easy to kind of get them on the hook. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so it's very much what you said. I'm a very big proponent of engaging with scammers. I've been doing it for almost a decade now, even back when I was poking APTs, pandas, and bears. But I'm a big proponent of it. I strongly believe that they should engage. However, it comes down to the organization. Do you have policies that you can do this? What are your lawyers' perspectives on this? How much are you de-anonymizing the information? And if you don't do that, what happens if you actually leak your company and they DDoS you? So those are concerns that you have to account for. Again, things that have actually happened. So be careful doing it. And if you're doing it in a sense where you're going to pass that information over to law enforcement, keep in mind, if you're a private citizen, you can pass intelligence over, and as long as it was obtained legally, you're good to go. So there's my underhanded pro tip for the day. So do it legally.
All right, there is one more interesting question here. I think that is worth asking. So, is there a reason why they want you to do something to get you, to buy into the process? I think there's like you mentioned, right, there's a long game that plays into this besides just that one little transaction, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the way I would like to word it is the scammers are amazing storytellers. And there was a guy in information security who actually did a presentation. I can't remember the name of his off the top of my head, but loved this presentation where he was like, being a good storyteller is something that's important. And with a lot of these scammers, that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to assume that identity of, I am the CEO, I am this person, how would I go and try and have somebody go and do this favor for me. And if I was the CEO trying to go do this, what would I do? What would I tell somebody to go and do that? So that's what they're doing, is they're trying to live up what would really happen if you were sitting there right there. So would your CEO say, hey, I need you to go do this favor. I'm in this meeting. It's a closed door meeting. I don't have any internet connectivity. I need to purchase this stuff for this client. Please go do that favor for me really quick. It's going to take you 2 seconds. I would absolutely love if you could go and do that. And that's what they try and do, is they try and play up those stories and that information and play on your emotions to kind of get you to go and do that. So that's very much why they do it and get you to go do that task, is they're consciously in the perspective of, okay, have that person go and do this, have them go and run this task, and keep going from there. So.
All right. Well, Chris, I don't know if you want to close us out here. And thanks again, Ronnie, for this great research. I was very excited reading this report and excited to be able to talk about this engagement today. And then, and thank you everyone for joining.
I can't wait for the next phase.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. I hope you have a great day. Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, Ronnie, for all your insights. Again, you'll get an email from us with a link to watch this on demand if you'd like to see it again, and links to our next webinar, where I hope you'll join us. Everybody have a wonderful day. Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.